Hello, everyone, and welcome to the With Chinese Characteristics podcast. I'm Natalie.
I'm Cherry.
And each episode, we bring you a topic about China researched by a real, actual Chinese person. And then we discuss it with me, a mostly clueless American. Is that okay, Cherry? Is that pretty close?
It's not going to cause problem for my immigration for being a real, actual Chinese person?
Well, I didn't say you're a communist.
No, it's a good
I didn't
point.
say you had any affiliation with the Communist Party.
You didn't say I'm a Chinese citizen, but I guess I was a
well,
Chinese
you are a
I
Chinese
am a
citizen. They clearly know you're a Chinese citizen.
They would have to know that, yes.
So,
okay, that's fine.
But
you want to try
But
this?
I will state for the record to anyone listening,
she's not a communist.
that Cherry has no relations, past or present, with the Communist Party of China, except for the fact that every day, as a student in Chinese elementary school and middle school, she had to wear a red scarf around her neck, which represented what?
It was dyed by the blood of the revolutionary soldiers.
So this week's topic, if you'll forgive me for going ahead, is Cherry and I were discussing the Chinese response to coronavirus after, they stopped covering it up, and how kind of amazing it is that China, the CCP essentially, can get everyone in the country to fall in line and do some very draconian things that most countries, people wouldn't put up with. And Cherry brings us a topic at the very start of the quote-unquote new China, the reign of the CCP.
The People's Republic of China.
The People's Republic of China, with this, the Four Pests Campaign. So please, Cherry, take it away.
Okay. In the 1950s, in the height of the Korean War, that American audiences must be familiar with.
Well,
maybe.
That's interesting because the Korean War is often described as the forgotten war.
Oh, I didn't know that.
In the United States, because World War II, obviously very famous.
Okay.
And Vietnam, obviously lots of things came from that, right? Movies and music but the Korean War happened only 5 years after the end of World War II. And, it's kind of muddled because we sort of didn't win. We sort of didn't lose. We sort of screwed up.
Yeah, you lost.
Yeah, I mean, I guess.
From the Chinese perspective.
I guess sort of like we didn't win. And if you don't win, you sort of lose,
therefore you
right?
Lost,
yeah. Yeah. So
the line was drawn between North Korea and South Korea.
Yeah.
So in the process of all this, in January 27th, 1952,
okay,
in Chorwon County in the North Korea, it was near the front line between and the war at that point, China and America in Korea. On this date, late night, multiple waves of American warplanes were observed flying low to the ground near the Chinese army's positions.
Okay.
American war raids were common at the time, so this was not strange, the event itself. However, what happened next was quite suspicious from the Chinese perspective. The warplanes did not dive or drop any bombs like expected, like they usually would do.
Yeah, right. If they're bombers, right, they're going to be blowing stuff up.
Yes, so they flew low to the ground and then they left. So this happened at night. And the next morning, on January the 28th, a Chinese soldier of the 42nd Army of the People's Liberation Army, scratch that, the People's Volunteer Army, because we were there voluntarily. The people really wanted to assist the Korean comrades.
Yeah, because technically it wasn't China, right? It was not
the People's Liberation Army, the PLA, commonly known. It was a volunteer army.
Okay.
Yeah. So Li Guangfu, a soldier of the 42nd Army, discovered that the bodies of a large number of flies, fleas, spiders, and other pests.
Okay.
So
in the snow or?
In the snow. So he discovered this in a snowfield because, again, this was January in North Korea.
It's very cold
very
in Korea,
cold.
Yeah.
So it was uncommon to have this many pests around at this time of the year, right?
Okay.
And to have a collection of, may I quote again, flies, fleas, spiders, and other pests all together spread out a few hundred meters over a snowfield was very uncommon.
Yeah.
So soon after, more soldiers from the same army, from the same unit, discovered more pests as far as 6 kilometers away.
Okay.
So quite a far spread.
Yeah, that's a pretty large area. I mean, assuming they're basically all dead, right? I mean,
yeah, it didn't say in the report I could find whether it was the bodies of the pests
yeah,
or it was the pests, but I'm assuming it would be very cold, and if they were not dead, this would be some strong pests,
yeah.
some strong insects that
yeah,
would be even make this whole situation even weirder. So at this point, these other soldiers had reported that the pests looked like a combination of louses, flies, and spiders.
So they didn't know what exactly they were.
They didn't know what they were, and they reported one kind of pest that looked like a combination of all these different
So
pests.
like a super pest.
I think that's the indication.
Okay.
And they had asked around with the local residents. The Koreans did not recognize this kind of pest. Because, it might be a Korean pest, that Chinese soldiers didn't recognize. But supposedly it wasn't.
Okay.
So it was a new kind of pest.
So it was a new kind of super pest that was like the combination
of louses, flies, and spiders.
Okay.
The weird thing is flies and spiders really don't look
flies and spiders eat each other.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So if you can breed them together, there must be some quite a scientific achievement. So needless to say, the 42nd Army thought this was very suspicious.
It sounds suspicious if it's true.
Yes. So due to the lack of equipment and all that stuff, it wasn't the best equipped army.
Okay.
Especially compared to the American side. So they did not have any equipment to conduct any tests of these pests.
To see what kind of bugs they were.
Yeah, so they couldn't. Therefore, they decided to immediately burn all the pests to avoid any risks of anything at this point, because we don't know. And they reported the situation to the headquarters. So this report was immediately treated very seriously.
It does seem suspicious.
Yes. And the incident had put the entire People's Volunteer Army on high alert.
In case there's any more super bugs getting dropped dead in snowfields.
Well, that was the indication, yeah, right? That by all means, it was dropped by the American warplanes that were flying low. So within the next few weeks, 8 more reports came up. Were sent to the headquarters by different units. With an observation of American airplanes dropping, quote again, spiders, flies, and fleas over different areas of Korea. The most dense report recorded 1,000 bugs per cubic meter, which is 1,000 liter. Yeah. So really, the most dense report said 1 bug per liter.
So a cubic, what is it? You said
cubic meter.
Cubic meter. So that's like 3 feet by 3 feet, basically.
Yeah.
About. I mean, there could be. There could be I mean, you can see.
So it doesn't seem that outrageous, but obviously in a snowfield in the winter of Korea, that's a lot. Okay. Right.
Yeah.
So eyewitnesses also reported incidents where on February 17th, 1952, 4 American warplanes were seen again near Chinese base.
Okay. This is a couple weeks after the initial
A couple
incidents.
Weeks after, yeah. And this time we had an eyewitness of the dropping. So the American warplanes dropped an item on a Chinese base. It did not land with a loud explosion noise. So no explosion noise and a very tiny noise that was made. And it carried a peculiar smell. Okay. And several soldiers nearby were knocked down by the smell. I couldn't figure out whether it was a figure of speech or that they were literally just down.
Like they were just like it was a poison gas and they just fell over.
Yeah, exactly. So I don't know if they physically fell over, but it was to emphasize it smelled bad. Okay. Immediately, the snowfield was full of flies. So it was flies. It was flies this time that had been dropped. So everyone on the base had witnessed it, and this gives confirmation to the party and the leadership of the PVA, People's Volunteer Army, that the Americans were conducting some sort of biological warfare.
I mean, flies only spread disease because they land on stuff, but...
Well, they drop them, they will land on you.
Okay. Sounds like maybe the Americans are more trying to just be annoying than like.
Well, I'm not sure because wouldn't they die? And flies fly away. Do you have a container for them when you drop them?
Yeah.
How does that work? I'm not sure. There was no containers described.
Okay.
It was just a bunch of bugs in a bowl, I guess, get dropped somehow. So I don't know how that works because as soon as they get into the air,
it's really
they would
cold.
disperse.
It's really
or they
cold.
would die.
It's really cold in Korea during the winter.
And they would die immediately, right? So weird.
But this was eyewitness. Okay. Fair enough.
Eyewitness by the whole unit.
Okay.
And they were a bad smell. So obviously it was a fact. Wink. I'm sorry. So it was mentioned that all specimens were usually found dead.
Okay.
And the temperature in the winter in North Korea and in these areas were way below freezing.
So if we Americans, I should say, were up to some sort of campaign,
you should have planned it better.
Yeah, it wasn't very well planned.
Well, maybe what if the dead bodies had carried some sort of viruses too,
Yeah, I guess.
Because you don't want to touch a dead mouth, right? Because it could carry.
Okay, yeah. All right.
Anyhow, I'm playing devil's advocate here.
Okay.
So, at this point, the Chinese epidemic prevention experts, who were dispatched to the front lines already after the initial report, determined that it was highly likely that these pests carried 4 different bacteria/viruses. So they actually named them, but not confirmed. They said highly likely.
So no one actually found these viruses.
No.
They just went, this is probably what the Americans are up to with no testing.
So the 4 bacteria and viruses named were the virus that causes cholera, the virus that causes typhoid, the one that causes bubonic plague, and the one that causes relapsing fever. So obviously they have they have big scientific names.
So quite a shotgun approach from the Americans with all these diseases.
Yes, really, we're starting a worldwide pandemic here by dropping this. Clearly. So, so on February 18th, once again, only within a few weeks after the initial report, the 15th Army of the People's Volunteer Army reported that cholera, typhus, and meningitis had spread amongst its soldiers.
Okay.
And 2 people had already died. So on the same day of the report that 2 soldiers had died from these diseases, Mao Zedong had instructed. Yeah,
we know who Mao Zedong is.
Mao had instructed.
If anybody doesn't know, Mao Zedong, he took over China. He's a communist. You should Google him.
No, he raised China up.
If you don't know who Mao is, you probably are listening to this podcast. But
you probably wouldn't be listening to it, yeah. So, Chairman Mao, be respectful here, had instructed that this is a high priority issue. And Zhou Enlai, the right hand of him, should please pay attention to this matter and handle it immediately.
Okay.
Even though the epidemic prevention experts on the front lines had recommended for tests to be done as soon as possible, it was ordered by Zhu De, a very important figure in the party. He was one of to put it into perspective, he was one of the 10 great marshals of the POA.
Okay.
And these marshals had funded China, the new China. So who would you say? He's Thomas Jefferson of America in a way.
Like a founding father, basically.
Yeah. So he's very important. And he had instructed that, it came from him, that the samples from the front lines should not be sent back to China to avoid any risks of a pandemic.
So that kind of makes sense.
Yeah.
But it's also convenient.
It's also catch-22.
Because you can just say they're whatever you want them to be and there's no testing.
So with that said, I could not find any documents myself. So maybe there's one out there, but as far as I could tell, there was no actual lab results or reports or scientific reports that confirms exactly what kind of, viruses these pests carried.
Okay.
Or what kind of pests these were.
Okay. And this is, you probably looked in English and in Chinese.
I looked in English and in Chinese, yeah.
So you're not necessarily saying that they didn't have something, but
there's no lab report.
You can't find any evidence.
No evidence that's tied to any labs.
Okay.
Chinese scientists, anything like that.
Okay.
Yeah. So also on the 18th, an official report was produced by the headquarters of the General Staff of the PLA, so the highest commanding office of the PLA.
And the PLA is
the People's Liberation Army.
The Army of China.
Yes. In which also at this point basically commanded the People's Volunteer Army in Korea.
Which was the people in Korea.
Yeah. So it was determined as a statement that the biological, abiological, and bacteriological warfare is indeed being conducted by the American military in Korea.
Okay.
And more importantly, this was a well-prepared effort. And with the assistance of several major figures from Unit 731, which conducted Japan's real secret biological warfare in China, which only 7 years prior.
So I know 731 is a real thing.
Yeah.
They're like the SS concentration camp
yes.
experiment people.
Yeah, so they had established labs in northeast, the Manchurian area of China. They had actually had gas chambers. They had conducted different kinds of experiments on bodies of
Chinese people.
Chinese people, yeah. So this was real.
Yes.
And not a made-up story. And the researchers involved in Unit 733 was, in fact, secretly given immunity by the United States. So it didn't look good.
So there is some evidence that the United States was interested in these kind of this sort of biological warfare.
Especially the data that came from the experiment that Japan had conducted in China. So,
but it does seem kind of suspicious that the Americans would do this in the middle of the winter when all the bugs would die.
Yes.
And also when at this point at the war, there's peace talks going on.
Yeah.
And, it's all very diplomatic.
Yes. So this picture looks very likely, right? Especially with the mention of if America had gotten help from the Japanese scientists in this regard.
It certainly seems like something the United States had the ability to do.
Sure.
Right? Yeah. That it's not
Well, let me say, I don't think there's any evidence that Unit 731 was inventing new pests. I don't think that
was crossbreeding spiders and flies and lice.
Yeah, I don't think that was. It was really big on human body experiments. But a conspiracy is a conspiracy.
But I mean, it is definitely, if the United States had wanted to do this, it would have been possible to airdrop.
You will be the only country. Yeah, yes.
In North Korea.
It's not. Yeah,
but it doesn't really seem like a good risk reward gain from it.
So it's not out of the realm of
possibility.
The smallest possibility that could ever happen. It's not like black is white. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But
Okay.
So anyhow, these are the official
records
on the Chinese side.
The propaganda response. Okay.
Yes. So Chinese claims of American biological warfare became a frequent topic of our propaganda broadcasts, using it as evidence that the U.S. imperialists were no better than the Japanese ones.
Okay.
So it must be stated that while the U.S. government did indeed have the ability, which is what you said, they might have had the ability to do some sort of a biological warfare, not necessarily dropping pests, but maybe other kinds. There's no concrete evidence that they did so. However, debate rages to this day, right?
Yeah.
Over the topic. So
the Chinese government, I mean, and this might not be part of your thing, but so the Chinese government still says to this day, the Communist Party of China still says to this day, the United States definitely did this.
Well, this comes as part of my disclaimer, so wait for it. The above description, all that I've said before, all of them are taken from an article, besides the ones about the Unit 733, because that's part of the public records now. Yeah. Right? So all the details about the bug reports, about, what was found, what was said, was taken from an article posted on people.com.cn, which is People's Daily's online news website. Okay. Which is the official propaganda state media of China. Okay. To the state.
So this is from the horse, this is straight from the source of this is what the Communist Party says happened.
Yes. So the article was written by the associate dean at the Academy of Military Science of the People's Liberation Army, which is the highest level of research institute of the PLA. Okay. So a very, prestigious, it's a highest
within
level
China. It's prestigious.
Yeah. let me put it this way. In this podcast, we are treating this description that's posted on the People's Daily News website and written by a very high, prestigious
general,
who is the associate dean of the highest research associate,
like think tank.
A think tank of the PLA. We are treating this as the official history recorded, and that's
official doesn't mean true.
We are treating this as the official history record that is sponsored, authorized, endorsed by the party today.
Okay.
To this date. So we're still upholding this.
So this is what Chinese school children are learning.
I don't know if they actually put it in
you know what I mean? But if they learn.
But if you look this up in Chinese, obviously there are articles going to say, this was suspicious or whatnot. But the official history. So basically, in the Chinese sense, the history has two versions, or many. But there is always a version of the official history that is written, again, endorsed, written, sealed off by the official, what do you call it? The power of the land at the moment, right?
The powers that be.
The
powers that be, right? Whoever's in charge at the time.
Yes. So we must treat it,
Because if something's in the official history of China, right? And obviously not like 1,000 years ago, but in the last 100 years, basically, if something's in the official history of China, and you're not necessarily an academic, because they get a little leeway because nobody reads what academics write, but if you're like anybody with any sort of public presence,
you must adhere to the
if you go against it, right? If you go,
let me just say, you will not hear a Chinese government official speaking of that, saying that the American did not conduct this warfare.
Okay, yeah.
Right? So
because
that's what we're doing.
That means you're saying all of these heroes of the revolution are liars.
Yes.
Okay.
Right. So whether it's true or not, we don't have the power to research to the end of it. But this is something that we are to believe.
Okay.
To be told to believe and upheld. So whether this was mentioned in Western books about the Korean War. The Korean War by Max Hastings described an incident which is a prank played by captured American soldiers during this time, and this did not help with the other argument that America did not do this.
Okay.
So the prank was they attacked the American soldiers, captured soldiers, so prisoners of war, attached a dead mouse to a small parachute and threw it, outside the jail cell.
Okay.
And they played this prank on their Chinese guards to make the Chinese believe that it was a specimen of the evidence of this biological warfare.
Okay.
So these prisoners of war, because obviously it was at the height of the propaganda, they knew of this claim that America is conducting this biological warfare, and they did this prank just to
just piss off the guards.
Piss off the guards.
Okay.
And it did not help because a Chinese doctor came. They wore masks. They very carefully put the body of the mouse in like a
test tube or something.
Or I don't know if they actually tested it, but this did not. This was this
used as evidence.
Exactly. So so it remains part of China's official memory, written memory of the Korean War. Okay. So due to this biological warfare conducted by the Americans, as so-called, the People's Volunteer Army started prevention methods to avoid a pandemic, to stop the spreading of the suspected diseases that are transmitted by these pests.
Okay.
So China started ordering large numbers of vaccines from the Soviet Union. Every unit is to clean, disinfect, and just in general look out for the public area on a schedule. They're supposed to kill any pests that they see, kill any mice they see, etc.
So this sort of seems though like basic military sanitation.
That you're already doing this anyways. Yeah. So I don't know if you'll go out of your ways to kill flies, because flies are flies.
No, but like mice and stuff.
Mice,
you know what I mean?
Probably, yes.
And you don't keep food. So this sort of just seems like,
this seems reasonable.
Yeah, right. It would help, right? Because soldiers get sick if they're in camps and stuff, and there's not clean.
Yes. So a few months after the initial discovery in Korea, then after we've started these prevention methods in the People's Volunteer Army.
Okay.
reports emerged from the northeastern area of China stating that they have now discovered pests carrying viruses and bacteria within the border of China.
Okay.
So that part of China is right next to, is bordering North Korea, where these pests were initially found. Right? So now it's gotten into China. So this had provided the justification for an all-out sanitary campaign in this area.
And we don't know if it's just, I mean, obviously there's going to be flies in Manchuria.
Yes.
Right? So it could just be just bugs that already were there.
Yes.
But it was treated very seriously.
It was treated very seriously, and a sanitary campaign was needed.
Okay.
This all had happened in a span of 2 months. So very quickly, the situation has developed.
Okay.
So in March 1952, the northeastern area near the border was declared as an emergency prevention zone for a pandemic to be. So vehicles coming in and out are all disinfected. Personnel must be vaccinated and be quarantined if any symptoms should appear. Newspapers in China are reporting this. The Chinese government is making official statements to accuse the Americans of expanding the scope of the biological warfare into China.
So now, I mean, so they think American planes are dropping fleas into Manchuria?
Maybe they're dropping it in the border and they got into China because the pests can survive in the winter. I'm not sure. Or Americans are doing it in China now.
Okay.
Somehow it's all, Americans are sneaky.
We are. It's true.
So a new Central Epidemic Prevention Committee is quickly established.
Okay.
With party leaders holding, important management positions, basically leading the committee. Official guidelines are issued to the entire country. Every level of the government, the military zones, and the volunteer army, it was decided that all over China, a springtime epidemic prevention movement is to start.
So the whole country's under attack.
Or must be prepared for an attack.
Okay. For these capitalist bugs.
Yes. So it obviously, to start the campaign, it had the focus of, quote unquote, public health and sanitation.
Yeah.
But it is once again, it's called a prevention campaign.
Okay.
Right? So at this point, it's a national mobilization. So later that year, in 1952, the SAM committee, the Central Epidemic Prevention Committee, is renamed to the Committee of Patriotic Health Movement.
Okay.
So, because this was near the end of the Korean War. So in just a few months after, in 1953, the Korean War ended. Therefore, theoretically, ending the need to defend against the evil Americans and their biological warfare.
So this Patriotic Health Committee outlived the United States.
The movement did not end with the war. Let's just say that. And the committee is renamed to something that has nothing to do with the war, but it's got a new name. It's got a new look.
Okay.
Right. It's got a new outfit. So now with the new emphasis of public health and sanitation, health knowledge education, and vector control. So vector control is, I didn't know what vector was. It's, if you didn't know too either, it's any method to limit or eradicate the mammals, birds, insects, or other arthropods. Here collectively called vectors, which transmit disease pathogens. So meaning that animals, pests, insects that transmit diseases.
So if mosquitoes spread malaria, you can't get malaria if there's no mosquitoes.
Yes, and the mosquito is the vector, and you must eliminate the vector.
Okay.
Hence the logic. So this is always ongoing, and in overall, you're supposed to just work on public health and sanitation and all that stuff. So which is can't.
I mean, it's not a bad thing to say everybody, wash your hands and boil your water.
Yes. So in fast forward 3 years, in 1955, the Patriotic Health Movement, the Patriotic Health Movement just is a funny name to me because.
What does it say? How do you say it in China?
爱国卫生运动委员会.
That sounds very serious.
Yes, and to be healthy is to be patriotic. So in 1955, 3 years later, this committee has a new purpose. There were 4 pests that were named as the group of vectors to look out for the first time. So these 4 pests at this point are rats, flies, mosquitoes, and weirdly, sparrows.
Like the bird
honest
sparrows.
one of them all, yes. So obviously, rats, flies, mosquitoes, yeah, we can all sort of agree they're pests.
Yeah,
right?
they
Like
spread
there's not many
things and we get
upsides
that.
of having many mice around.
Yes.
Or mosquitoes or flies.
Unless you have snakes to feed or something.
Yeah, exactly. So the reason, let me 1 second. So it was being put front and center as the movement with other goals and smaller movements surrounding it that we are to kill the 4 pests.
Okay.
They're bad. They're the pests. They're the pests.
Yeah.
They're the bad ones. So
there's no value to pests. There's nothing good can come with these 4 animals. They bring exactly 0 positive things to society.
Yeah.
They only bring bad stuff
to nature, really.
Yes,
Society and
to nature. They must be killed.
Yes. So obviously the existence of sparrow as one of the 4 pests is a bit of a weird situation. You might wonder why.
What disease do sparrows spread?
Well, the problem is that they're not spreading diseases. So the evidence that I could find is that it was reported that farmers of this that it was reported by Chinese farmers to the central government that sparrows were eating a lot of grains and lowering the yields from the field by a great amount.
Okay.
So
this is...
Mao had heard of this report, and he had made the decision to put the sparrow as one of the 4 pests.
So this isn't sanitation. This is more like economic.
Uh-huh.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we're mixing and matching here, but okay.
It's all patriotic.
It's true. Okay.
See the magic of it?
Yeah.
Yeah. So surely this could be true, right? Like birds can eat grains.
Sure, right?
I
mean,
so you can deny that.
I mean, scarecrows scare off crows, right? I mean, I guess you don't want crows around.
Yeah, exactly. So, okay, let me say this. I think there were methods. I don't think sparrows were always seen as like, yeah, let's let them eat the grains. I think it was understood by any seasoned farmer that, yes, sparrows might eat your grains.
Chase them off if you see them on your
chase them
plan.
off or something, right?
Okay.
So no one was wanting to breed sparrows.
They weren't best friends with the sparrows, each other.
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
We coexisted.
In coexistence,
Yeah.
okay.
So one reason that I could deduce, this is my personal opinion.
Okay.
But obviously, this is our podcast. This is all of our personal opinions.
It's all our personal opinions.
It was a planned economy at the time already. Obviously, starting 1949 was all a planned economy, right?
Okay.
So the PRC was in the middle of its first 5-year plan. So we have plans, and we go, these 5 years, we got to reach these goals nationwide, right? How much agriculture outcome, how much manufacturing, and all that.
Yeah.
So
eliminate poverty by 2020.
Yeah.
Xi Jinping.
Well, we only have a few months left. We've got to work very hard. Yeah. So this is 1955. So we're in the middle of the 5-year plan. And it could be seen as if the farmers or the local representatives, right? Or
we're saying we can't meet our 5-year plan because all these goddamn sparrows.
Goddamn sparrows. You want to raise the problem early on, right?
Yes.
Before the deadline.
And some farmer goes, like, they're not going to kill this. Like, the sparrows just live here, right?
Let's put the expectation, like, let's lower the expectation, because it was widely known that the goals for these 5-year plans were very high.
Unrealistic.
Yeah, and the party officials that would say, would suggest that let's not be unrealistic here would really get the bad times.
Yeah. If you said, are you crazy? We can't grow that much rice.
Sorry, no, you don't believe in communism. You don't believe in the power of the people.
So basically, you think, and that's actually interesting because it sort of does make sense in a way, that people might have the tendency to blame things that they think can't be changed.
Yes.
Like, oh, it's not enough water. It's the birds, right?
There's
and then
drought. There's a 3-year.
And then
there's
Mao's
a 3-year bad weather period.
And then Mao's like, well, okay, we can solve that.
Yeah,
right?
we can solve it.
Okay, so
easy.
Yeah, easy. We'll just kill every bird in China.
Like you're talking to the party here, who's very, like, honestly speaking, very good at mobilizing people.
Right.
Like, it was well known that, not well known, but it's truth. It's true that collectivism is very much practiced very well by the party, and
Yeah.
so
I mean,
it's like,
it's
no
sort
problem.
of it's sort of bringing me back again to coronavirus, where it's like,
Yes.
oh, 2-week incubation period, 2-week recovery.
Everyone gets locked down 2 weeks.
If literally every person has to stay in their apartment for 2 months,
Yeah.
no more virus. But what about my diabetes medicine?
you just
Nobody
gotta-
gives a shit about your diabetes.
Shouldn't have had diabetes.
Yeah, you shouldn't have had diabetes. You know what? Just
What if I was born with
sit in your apartment for a month.
Wait, what's the word? Darwinism
Darwinism, yeah.
for
Survival
for
of
human
the,
societies.
survival of the fittest.
Yes. So we'll get into the coronavirus times campaign more later, but I think so. It was part of the official record. Let me see what the party says, or what the state media says, that Mao had received this report and therefore put it in the list. So why did the farmers say this, whether this was true or not, because it could be partially true.
It could be,
Yeah,
right?
but this was, but it's weird, right?
Yeah.
So as a result, Mao called it for attention, and sparrows to be eliminated.
Okay.
And it was also declared by the government that birds are public animals of capitalism,
Okay.
for the reason that they're eating our grains and lowering our yields, and really slowing down the march towards communism.
Okay, so now
Right?
not only are these pests, they're capitalist pests.
Yes, and
Okay.
these sparrows, are the reasons why we are having famines, and why
Okay.
the food yield is low, why we don't have clothes on our backs, and
Okay.
it's a representation,
These sparrows-
embodiment of the capitalism.
These sparrows are really hardworking in opposing communism.
Exactly. Yeah, the sparrows has an agenda that we must oppose,
Yeah.
and we must meet them head on. So in 1956, in the Guideline of National Agriculture Development from 1956 to 1967, the four pests were mentioned again as a goal to eliminate. In this report, it said 5, 7, or 12 years everywhere.
Okay.
So it gave some sort of a range of,
So sort of like
possibilities.
a high, medium, and low score.
Yeah. So in major cities like Beijing, local movements at this point already started with the emphasis on mice mostly. Mice.
Okay.
Right. So rats.
So the plan was to kill all the pests,
in 5, 7, or 12 years everywhere. I
But-
guess everywhere in China.
but it's kind of hard to kill all the flies.
Yes. And at
or
this point,
it's
it's not really a
mosquitoes,
political
I
movement
guess.
yet. It's obviously a guideline.
Okay.
And local officials obviously take these agriculture guidelines and do what they need to do with it, right? So there were some campaigns that had sort of started, but again, with
'Cause
the
if you're-
emphasis on rats.
Okay. Because if you're a local official and you want to get promoted,
Yeah.
you're going to just pick some guideline that got put out and tell everybody to do it.
And there's nothing wrong with killing more rats.
Yeah, nobody's going to complain about rat killings.
Right. And I mean, it might even be it's
I mean,
a
it
good thing to
probably
kill more
is,
rats,
right? I mean,
probably. Yeah.
yeah.
So fast forward 2 years to 1958. At this point in this year, the Four Pests Campaign is officially a campaign.
Okay.
It's got a name. It's called 除四害, right? So it was one of the first actions taken in the Great Leap Forward in China, which lasted 3 years from 1958 to 1962.
So I'm sure we'll do a whole episode
On
or
the Great
maybe
Leap Forward?
multiple episodes on the Great Leap Forward. But if nobody knows, Great Leap Forward was sort of Mao's attempt to bend reality with communism of like, it doesn't matter.
You mean achieve anything?
Yeah,
with
achieve anything.
Sheer willpower.
By sheer willpower, we can accomplish anything. And a lot of people died, and it was all man-made. But Cherry, do you want to tell everyone, if they don't know, what the Great Leap Forward is called in Chinese history books?
Let me just say this. I've learned it I did not know it was called Great Leap Forward before I knew it was called 3-year natural disasters period. So for the Chinese listeners, if you must know what 3年自然灾害 is. But really, maybe other people, I don't know. I wasn't astute. I wasn't a student of history when I was little, because I always thought just my history textbooks were so boring. But however, I did not associate the 3-year natural disaster period with the Great Leap Forward, because I sort of knew the Great Leap Forward wasn't the best thing that had happened, right? It wasn't, honestly speaking, it wasn't, the party wasn't like, yeah, let's do that again. Although today might be said otherwise. But when I was growing up, it wasn't, it was true that the party was sort of like, yeah, let's just,
we tried it. It didn't work out.
Yeah.
It wasn't great, but it wasn't bad.
Yes, but I did not associate like natural disaster, 三年自然灾害, natural disaster spirit with the Great Leap Forward. Like I literally thought that's just two independent like periods of history.
So I think
which was silly of me, but
we'll probably talk about multiple issues, but yeah, it's just so basically a lot of things happened that were bad because of this movement, and essentially the CCP invented a different concept, and pinned all of the bad stuff to that.
The natural disasters.
Yes.
There wasn't that many natural disasters.
No.
It wasn't. I mean, there were disasters.
Yeah, there's always a disaster.
But I don't know. There's no type. You know what I mean? Like, because you read that name, you would think, okay, so maybe there was like a typhoon.
Yeah, or like giant earthquake,
or a hurricane, or giant earthquake, or a terrible drought. Not really.
Yeah.
So, for another episode.
Yeah.
Maybe, if I want to get banned. Yeah. So okay. So where was I? So the Four Pests Campaign is one of the first actions taken in the Great Leap Forward. So you were supposed to take it head on.
Okay.
With full force, right? Because it's a movement. It's a national movement. And
it's a war.
It's a war on the pests.
Yeah.
So the goal of the campaign, now we have a definite timeline. The goal of the campaign was to eliminate the four pests in 10 years or less.
Okay.
So this was 1958. So let's say by 1968, there will be no rats, mosquitoes, flies, and sparrows in China.
Okay.
Children born after that weren't supposed to know what they are.
Yeah.
And there are cartoons. We'll see if I can find it. But they're not cartoons. Like they're like paintings. I guess they're cartoons, political cartoons of a museum in like the future. I think in the 1970s maybe.
Celebrating how we're going to make these things extinct.
There's a child standing in front of a picture of a rat and saying, what is that? Because they have never seen one. Because we have eliminated them. Right?
Yeah.
Isn't that okay, so I got to find that. So, being the official instructions sent out by the party and the State Council of the People's Republic of China, because we have one, said the task is to eliminate all four pests within 10 years or less. And therefore starts... I guess we're starting the episode. So
yeah, starting a war.
Yeah, starting a war. So this has put the country into what can only be described as the pest-killing frenzy.
Okay.
Newspapers and posters were filled with tips and techniques to eliminate these four types of pests. And speeches were given exclaiming the virtues of the campaign. So contests were held amongst enterprises. No, we didn't have enterprises. I don't know why I wrote that, but contests were held amongst government agencies, schools, and just communities in general.
Okay.
Everyone's loyalty to the party and to the new China is not judged by their ability to eliminate the four pests.
Okay.
And to be good at it doesn't just make you a good, skilled serial pest killer. It makes you a good revolutionary and a hero.
Okay. Because there's no more capitalists to fight in China for now.
For now, the Korean War had ended.
Now the bugs are the rats and the sparrows are the capitalists.
Yeah. So the heroes are treated with respect normally given to war heroes because, like you said, this is a war at this point. If you are not eager to participate, it makes you a possible capitalist sympathizer. So, very dicey situation. You better be in it to, So, just like any other political movements, though, there's more to what you see on the surface. And I read this newsletter report that was interesting to me. So this was a reader's letter that's posted on the Beijing Daily on January the 1st, 1958. So at the beginning of the campaign. And this reader said, I ran into several elementary school students who were chasing a mouse. When they realized the mouse had no tail, they released the mouse and spared its life. I asked them why, and one of them answered, the teacher asked us to turn in the tail as evidence of killing the mouse. Why would I capture it without the tail? So the reader who wrote the newspaper thought that the teacher didn't do a good job of explaining the essence of the campaign, which he thought was to actually kill these pests and contribute to public health causes.
Instead of just collecting rat tails.
I would argue that maybe the children here had an understanding of the campaign that's closer to its essence.
Which is it's pointless?
Well, which is to, I don't know if it's pointless, because it obviously had a political goal.
Yeah.
And it had a political appearance.
I mean, it's good to kill. I mean, mice and rats in cities don't help anything.
Yes, but I think the children, oddly, because they sort of see through the political masks of it, they go, well, really what they care about is that they see the tail.
Yeah.
That's really what the teachers and the schools and the officials care about. So we'll just do that. We don't need to.
It's like if you kill if a tree falls in the forest and no one's there, if you kill a rat in the street and it doesn't have a tail, does anyone care?
It's the declaration that really matter, right? It's not the.
It's the optics.
Yeah, it's the optics, exactly. So amongst the four pests, the killing of the sparrows was the most iconic one, and it also had the greatest long-term consequences. But so I'll talk about the consequences first. But so to fast forward, not to spoil the results for you, it basically put the sparrows in China, pushing it to near extinction, just in a few years. And the sparrows we're talking about here are Eurasian tree sparrows. So they're very tiny. They do eat grain, seed, and fruit, but they also eat a lot of pests.
Okay. So one could almost call them comrades on the Great Pest Campaign.
When they eat the pests, yes.
Right?
But not when they eat the grains.
Because,
Yes. But if you want to blame the low crop yields on something, you would mention that the sparrows ate the grains. You wouldn't mention that they ate the pests to help with the yields, because then why is the yield still low?
Yeah.
You have to find a scapegoat of somehow, right? Yes. So I think it's fair to argue that in a way the sparrows are seen as scapegoats for many things here. Capitalism, obviously, for low yields, for low crop yields, for capitalism, for really class struggle, right? So a small sparrow represented a lot. So the methods of killing sparrows were very elaborate. And this was promoted on newspapers, party medias, propaganda, all that.
Okay.
So one method that's very highlighted was that citizens would ban pots and pans so that sparrows would not have the chance to rest on tree branches, and they would fall dead from the sky as a result.
Okay.
So this was very commonly used.
So you would just, every time you saw a bird on a branch,
you would bang something.
You would bang something, and I guess sparrows don't have that much stamina.
No, they're very,
So they
don't live very long to begin with, and they
Yeah.
are very tiny, so they don't really store that much, So
Okay.
So this was effective. Let me say that. And also sparrow nests were destroyed. Their eggs were broken, and their chicks, if found, the ones that cannot fly, would be killed. In addition to these tactics, citizens also resorted to simply shooting the birds down from the sky. So we'll shoot the birds like Betty in the Mad Men,
Chinese people had guns?
Well, so during this time, gun control in China was not particularly strict. And
because people still had guns from the Civil War, or?
Well, so public officials are actually given guns.
Oh, okay.
When I say public officials, let me say all of China right now is public entity. There's no private sectors or anything, right? Mm-hmm. So security guards at a warehouse would be security guards for the country. So they would be given guns.
So there's no such thing as private rice. It's all China's rice.
Yeah.
Okay.
And some examples I found are very weird. For example, middle school principals will be given guns as well.
Okay.
So, and obviously, I will say that I found reports of a mixture of air guns and real guns at this point. But air guns at that point also counted as guns.
Well, sparrows are very small, so an air gun
would be very effective, right? So it's possible they also shoot the sparrows from the air guns. But air gun obviously is not regulated. Is it regulated here in America today?
Slightly. Not like a regular gun.
Okay. So a lot of people had air guns. That was very common, but also people had real guns with bullets as well. So it was not out of the realm of the possibility, right? So the People's Daily article posted on April 19th, 1508, reported a sparrow campaign in detail in Beijing on this day. So 3 million Beijing residents had participated in this campaign on this day.
To kill the sparrows?
To kill sparrows, yeah. 3 million, can you imagine? Like,
yeah.
And the campaign started at 4 a.m. And I have numbers here. 830 trap stations were set with poisonous baits. 200 shooting zones were filled with sharpshooters. School children, to be useful and do what they can do to contribute to the campaign, they carried pots and pans, ladles and spoons in order to make noises to scare the sparrows away. To, I guess, tire them out, really.
Yeah.
Right? In order to gain intelligence on the enemy, literally the enemy.
Yeah.
30 motorcycles were sent out to on scout missions. City commander and district commanders, because we have commanders, because it's a battle.
Yeah, it's a war, Cherry.
Yeah. They rode around in cars, and directed the battles. Sharpshooters from the People's Liberation Army also came to the aid.
Okay, so the army's involved too.
Mm-hmm. So the total number of sparrows killed on this day in record is 83,249.
So those are the ones they counted. Like I
they
guess they
could have the body to
They
count.
made a little pile of the little sparrow bodies.
I'm assuming many piles.
Okay.
Of 80,000 sparrows, right? So I'm not sure this was on the same day, but there is a story of some sparrows at one point found refuge in various diplomatic missions in China.
So they're like political asylum seekers.
Exactly. So the personnel of the Polish embassy in Beijing denied the Chinese request of entering the premise of the embassy to scare away the sparrows that were hiding in the embassy.
They probably felt bad.
Yes. So as the result, the embassy was surrounded by people with drums. And after 2 days of constant drumming, the Poles had to use shovels to clear the embassy of dead sparrows. They couldn't,
because they all died after a while of just the drumming?
Of just, being tired out, I guess.
Okay.
So,
I guess if they flew out of the embassy, they'd shoot them.
I guess so, right?
Yeah.
So I guess they didn't save the sparrows after all. It is actually a very sad
I mean,
description
if you're
of
a
the event.
sparrow, yeah.
Yes. So in Shanghai, it was also reported that, whoa, this is a big number. I forgot how big. So it was reported that 250,000 sparrows and their eggs. So I guess the eggs count as one egg count as one sparrow.
Yeah.
So 250,000 sparrows were killed in one day.
Well,
So they did as 3 times as well.
I feel like
as the Beijing residents.
you can't necessarily trust these numbers.
Of course not.
Because at this point, it's probably a competition, right? Mm-hmm. It's like, oh, Beijing killed 100,000 sparrows. We have to kill 200,000 sparrows.
Yes.
Right?
Because we're
more patriotic.
Yeah. So in this process, obviously, this is, these reports will show us a very vivid picture of how widespread this campaign was.
Mm-hmm.
And however, there were some pushbacks that we know today because there were these ideas that and slogans that the official propaganda had listed out as negative examples to not do.
Okay.
They're like, some people are doing this, don't do that.
So
That's anti-revolutionary.
So it's hard to believe,
mm-hmm.
but some people could be going too far. The idea of going too far in early communist China seems kind of hard to believe, but there was a limit, I guess.
So there was a superstition idea that you should not kill sparrows, and especially to steal their eggs. So steal the eggs of little birds is sort of like it's sort of a symbolism of like killing their ancestral line.
So it's like bad karma.
Bad karma, and you will be punished after death.
Okay.
So that was called as superstition, and you should not follow it.
Because the whole thing with communism, I mean, that's why you can't have skeletons in Chinese video games even today, right? Because, you know what I mean? It's bad.
See, I didn't know that, and I was like, what?
But you know that now, right?
Yes.
I mean, like in World of Warcraft, they have to censor the undead. Because
But I mean, it's weird because obviously you see zombies in Chinese movies, and there are zombies, right? But they're not skeletons, I guess. They always have these like big rope and like a like a hat that's like a.
You mean
like
the hopping Chinese zombies? Yeah.
Yeah.
We should do an episode on those. But so basically, even though the Chinese government is saying don't do superstition, still people in villages are like,
Yes. There's another idea that's being prohibited.
Okay.
By the party, and. I don't know if this will surprise you or not, but I feel bad saying this. But basically the idea is that sparrows taste good, so it's not a bad idea to catch them and eat them. What's the big problem?
Okay.
And even though it seems to promote the idea of killing more sparrows, the party had caught this, you guessed it, individualism. So we're killing the sparrows not for your own pleasure. We're killing the sparrow for communism, right?
So you can't gain anything by it.
No, you cannot gain any personal...
Even if you gain a meal. No. That's counter-revolutionary.
Yes.
You have to be doing it for selfless reasons.
Yes, but interestingly, apparently one of the reasons that the Sparrow campaign really took off compared to any other campaigns of the Four Pests, one of the reasons is that sparrows can be eaten. But
you can't eat mosquitoes.
So in some reports so it's sort of murky because obviously you have to submit the body of the sparrow. But maybe in some cases, after they count the body, you can get the body back. And
if the numbers that they're talking about, if you kill 50 sparrows in a day, you know what I mean? You give them 30. Yeah. You can still eat 20 of them.
Yeah, but you want the big numbers.
Yeah, I guess
so. So this is something else I found that I think made more sense. So many other types of birds would also be killed as collateral damage in the process of killing sparrows. Because if you're banging pots all day... Yeah. All birds will die.
Yeah. I mean, it
doesn't matter which bird.
This seems very. I don't know how much to do with this, but I know that something that we've talked about is when we were in China. Yeah. Well, I mean, you were in China your whole life, basically. But when I was in China, there's not many birds in China, right? Like in cities and stuff, right?
I mean, there are some.
But I mean, no, compared to the U.S., right?
Yeah, I'll say the kind of birds that's just roaming in public. And not the ones that fly around a lot. No, there were ducks and geese.
There's some big, plump, good-eating birds in the U.S. Right? Just walking around. I
always see them roaming around near
there's
a lake.
There's some big, plump birds that you could make a good meal out of.
Let's just say, growing up in a Chinese city, to be this close to many good-tasting... too many birds that seem to be not skin... You know what I mean? They seem to be enjoying life. Yes. And they're just roaming around. To be around this many of them was something I was not used to. Yeah. It was new to me.
And so, I guess all of the tactics they're using to kill sparrows, as you said...
Also kill other birds.
They'll kill any bird, right? Squirrel. Anything, basically.
So supposedly, this had motivated people to participate in a campaign, especially in the rural area.
Oh, because you could eat all the things besides sparrows.
So at the time, food was tight. Oh. And people were hungry all the time. Because in 1958, same year, a lot had happened. You see, there was a lot of, unknown to the world.
China's a rough place.
A lot was happening.
We'll get into it. It will be known to the world once we do episodes on them.
Yeah. That's good confidence.
Thank you, Cherry. That's called advertising. Podcast.
So in 1958, same year, the People's Commune had started in the rural areas of China. So not in cities yet.
That's collectivization, or?
So in a commune, everything was shared.
Yeah, okay.
There's no need for private kitchens. You couldn't have one if you wanted to. Private cookings are banned. So you can't make a noodle for yourself. Obviously there are, exceptions, but in general, it was banned. And every household's pots, pans, tables, chairs, cooking utensils were all collected and contribute to the commune's kitchen. You can't have pots at home. You have no stove, right?
That's capitalist.
Private cooking is capitalist.
Yeah, private cooking is capitalist.
And animals, grains, food stocks were all contribute to the commune for redistribution. All farming activities were centrally assigned. Everyone in the commune had a job assigned by the leaders. So basically, the state took the control of the land and the labor in the rural areas. And
but if you could kill, and it all, spoiler alert, it all went wrong, right?
Well, I don't know. People were hungry, so I wouldn't say it was successful.
Well, I think people were. I think putting it, people are hungry is putting it a little lightly, Cherry.
That was also the year the Great Chinese Famine had started, which is 1958, and it had lasted 3 years.
Just coincidentally.
Just coincidentally, due to natural disasters. So the reason I mention this is because basically people were hungry, especially in the rural areas. They don't have enough food, right? And if you have an opportunity to go and catch some birds, and you don't have to submit the bodies of the other birds. This was true.
Yeah.
Right. So I don't know about the sparrows. I think you have to submit them.
But you could sneak a couple out, right?
You could probably, right? But obviously this was an opportunity
Yeah.
for food.
Yeah.
And obviously it's also very revolutionary to go and do these things.
Yeah.
So this would, as you can see, motivate people, right? So
well, it's also, right, I mean, if you go work on the communal farm,
yeah.
you just get a little percentage. If you blow off the
Well,
communal,
you don't get anything.
Yeah, right.
You,
If you
you
go,
get to eat at a commune.
yeah, if you go blow off the communal farm and go hunt birds,
Yeah.
I mean, you could have some crow for dinner.
Right? Good
Yeah.
times, right? You
Yeah.
would just make a little bonfire
Maybe a
in the
duck.
field. Maybe maybe a duck.
Maybe a duck.
Well, I don't know. The ducks are owned by the commune. Ducks
Oh.
are domestic
Maybe
animals.
a wild duck. There's no wild
Maybe-
ducks in China?
I think we would have eaten them all, given that there's a
Okay.
great famine going on. People are eating like tree barks. You know?
Yeah.
So bad times. And another reason that the sparrow campaign really took off compared to the other ones is that compared to flies and mosquitoes, maybe not rats, the result of killing sparrow is very measurable. And mice, rats were already being killed anytime they're discovered before the campaign. Anytime in history, any country, I think. I don't
Yeah.
think. And so the Smash Sparrow campaign really was put front and center.
The smash sparrows?
It's called a Smash Sparrow campaign. We're smashing them. So, really, we're tiring them out in general. We're not, that's not how we're. But so the Sparrow campaign was put front and center, A, because it's the most measurable, but B, because of how great of an achievement you can achieve compared to you're already killing mice.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and it also had required more mobilization, not less, for the people, of the people. Therefore, it had a much bigger political impact. And you might think maybe you didn't want the trouble to mobilize all these people, which is the contrary of what the party wanted to do, because this overall was really a practice of a campaign. This overall was a training of its people, of China's people, to participate in something so large scale.
To get everybody used to thinking collectively.
Exactly.
Okay.
So the sparrow is obviously not just a bird at this point, right? The sparrow is a political symbol and is a public enemy. It's an enemy of the party, enemy of communism. Therefore, enemy of the people. I said enemy too many times. The reason why sparrow was put on the list was a weird situation.
Yeah.
And the reason why the sparrow campaign was the most front and center that had really distinct, because I don't think rats were really in much danger.
Yeah.
They're still around, and we didn't, so there's not much environmental downsides to killing all the rats.
Because rats
probably lots of upsides.
Because rats are
probably lots of benefits.
Primarily a human pest, right? They're not. They're not really like a ecosystem thing, right? They're a wild animal, right?
Yes. So, well, I mean, sparrows are also wild animals, but they had they're very important
they're part of the ecosystem, right?
Yes.
Rats really aren't.
Yes. So that's the reason why it,
Maybe they are.
Really
Sorry to all the rat lovers out there.
Yeah.
Sorry if I'm.
Maybe there's something that you do for the environment.
Sorry
that we're not
if I'm. If I'm
yes.
defaming rats.
So it was said in the official guidelines that sent out by the party,
okay,
that city sparrows can be skipped, because
Well,
if you remember, the problem of the sparrow was that it eats grains in the field. So there's not much problem with sparrows in the city. Obviously, in practice, this was largely ignored.
When you say that Shanghai killed like 300,000 of them in an afternoon, it doesn't really sound like people were following that guidance.
Yeah. So even on the contrary, because of the hunting of the sparrow is an all-consuming activity, in the countryside, the people's commune sometimes didn't want to contribute the farmers' time to go and kill sparrows because they need people working the fields.
Yeah.
Right? So there was some pushbacks in that aspect. And so, but in the cities, residents, especially students and government employees, they can all be mobilized under the political cause much more quickly without losing any quote-unquote productive time.
Okay.
So the political movement was much more easily turned into a mass movement in the cities. and urban areas. So therefore, obviously, all these reported high-profile campaigns were in Shanghai, Beijing, all these big urban areas that has no, fields in the city.
The sparrows can't be causing too much ecological damage in downtown Shanghai.
Yes. Also, it's possible that we're reading many more stories from the cities because they're the cities.
Literate.
Yeah.
People who write stuff down.
Yes.
Yeah.
There are reasons why.
They say like history's written by the victors, but also history's written by the people who have pen and paper.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
So,
well, no, wait until like 1970, 1966, then we don't. History's not written by people with pen and paper. History's not written
by anyone.
Yeah.
So.
Especially not by the people with the pen and paper.
Foreshadowing. We'll get there. So,
up until November 1958, the total count of sparrows killed in that year was 1.9 billion. So that's a lot of
That's the official record.
That's the official record. Okay. So obviously we don't know if it's, because exaggeration is definitely a thing, I would say. Yeah. Right? But also there could be sparrows that were killed and other birds that were killed and not counted as well. So we don't know if that's, but that's the official number.
So but the key takeaway is it wasn't just propaganda that this was happening. Everybody took it very, very seriously. Mm-hmm. And almost everybody in China
had participated one way or the other.
And they killed a lot of them.
So as you could imagine, this is causing a problem for the environment.
I can imagine, yes, especially because they eat bugs, right? Sparrows eat bugs.
Yeah. So in November 1959, the party secretary of the Chinese Academy of Science, so, another very prestigious institution of China, submitted a report to the central government. He said, and this is very cagey way of putting this, but this is a translation.
Because if you go against it, you could get put in prison.
You don't want to say, obviously he's not going to say, no, you were wrong.
Yeah.
This policy was bad. He wasn't going to say that, right?
Yeah.
So he said, in general, scientists think that the benefits and the downsides of sparrows vary depending on the location and the times of the year.
Okay.
So
and he's not even saying, what does that mean? Yeah. He's not naming the scientists. He's just
scientists.
I heard from a guy. I don't want to name any names, but people
and there's multiple of them, so let's not target any personal.
Yeah.
So in next sentence, he said, some scientists are lenient towards eliminate the damages caused by the sparrows, but not all sparrows.
Okay.
So I don't know what it means to eliminate the damages caused by the sparrows.
Maybe we scare them away from the crops, but leave them alone when they're in the trees or something.
Maybe, right?
Yeah.
So this was said in a very sort of careful way.
But was it put in an official newspaper or something?
No, it was an official report submitted by the party secretary of this institution so he sent it to the central government.
So this was a serious memo.
Yes.
Basically.
So it was a memo, right?
Yeah.
So the reason we know this memo is because, obviously I think maybe they published it later, but the reason other people know this memo is because the central government did recognize this and agreed to it, and Mao had said, yes, send it to the other department.
So before this happened, there must have been some sort of consequences than people were already seeing,
This was not a sudden move, right?
Okay.
So there were lots of evidence that to kill all the sparrows is not only pointless, but also damaging to the environment.
Okay.
So as an example, in spring 1959, trees in big cities
had a
pest problem.
6 months.
More than basically 1 year after this campaign had started.
Okay.
After 1.9 billions, 1.9 billions of sparrows had killed. After this, trees in big cities had a pest problem.
Okay.
Obviously, it was springtime. They were supposed to grow leaves, but no leaves was grown. It was very obvious, and all the trees were bald,
Or barren.
Yes.
Okay.
And the pests were roaming free because their natural enemy, the sparrows, are all gone.
Okay.
So the pests are actually having a great time in this country. More seriously, in the countryside, the crops have suffered more of the damage to the free roaming of the pests. Yeah. So in the spring of 1960, so several months after this report was submitted.
Yeah.
That saying that some scientists suggest maybe.
So 1959, trees weren't growing leaves because I'm guessing just caterpillars were just eating them immediately.
Yeah,
And
crops were
also-
suffering.
And also crops were suffering, right?
Yes, and the report was submitted. So in the spring of 1960, Mao had changed the forest pest to bed bugs instead of sparrows.
Okay.
So I guess that's a good move because
Yeah.
we can get rid
Whatever.
of the bed bugs. It's fine.
Sure,
We can
yeah.
lose them. The campaign against sparrows has finally ended.
Okay.
At this point, because sparrows are killed to near the extinction, for real, China had to import sparrows from the Soviet Union to save the crops. I guess, and the city trees.
Yeah.
So the official policy has said, the official policy announcement to end this policy, it has said, after weighing the pros and cons, we will tolerate sparrows even though we are going to suffer the loss of grains. So really, you didn't really say, it's not really a thing like, oh yeah, that was a bad decision.
We screwed up.
Yeah, it's not that. It's saying like, okay, you know what? Maybe like we will bear the consequences and we will make some changes here.
Yeah.
But it's not in no way really saying like, yeah, sparrows are good.
Yeah.
So a few years after this, the Cultural Revolution had started. The scientists who were against the sparrow campaign, because there was a few of them here and there, right? These scientists were accused of using the issue of sparrow to oppose Chairman Mao, to oppose the Great Leap Forward, because at this point the Great Leap Forward was a good thing, and the supreme instructions of Chairman Mao.
So these were the scientists who were brave enough to go, maybe killing all the sparrows
No, they
is
were
a bad...
anti-revolutionary enough.
Yeah.
Brave enough. What are you talking about?
Who are anti-revolutionary enough to go, maybe killing all these sparrows and creating an artificial famine is not the greatest idea. They got
No, they showed their true teeth
yeah,
against communism.
their CIA plants. Yeah.
So one of the scientists who had actually died in 1962 prior to Cultural Revolution, lucky him or not, his grave was smashed by the Red Guards and his body, the remains of his body, was exposed as a punishment and humiliation for his actions against, I guess for his actions for the sparrows and against the sparrow campaign.
So they dug him up and
They dug him up.
okay.
Which is, okay, let me say, maybe in other cultures as well, I can imagine. In Chinese culture, it's very much a very high level of it's a very serious humiliation.
Yeah.
And just...
It makes me think of, there was a famous case in the Catholic Church in the medieval times where there was a pope who died. And then a couple of years later, they dug him up and they put him on trial. And they dressed him.
They put the body in trial?
They dressed
The skeleton
in all
at
the
the point?
pope robes.
Oh my God.
And they were like, admit that you were a bad pope. And they had a
He
whole
couldn't
trial
admit it.
with well, I know, but it's I don't know, it's a Catholic church, but so they did a whole thing. So
So we're not alone.
no.
Cruelty.
China's not the.
Cruelty is a universal human.
Though that was in the 1200s, not in the 1960, but still.
Yes. So even though the campaign had ended, obviously the memory was fresh, and the term four pests or eliminate four pests, so 四害 or 除四害 never really went away. So if you talk about it, people will generally know what it is. And it doesn't really always come with a negative connotation.
Okay.
Which So this term gets brought up again and again. Very often, sanitary and public health campaigns throughout China would still list eliminate four pests as one of the policies or their goals or slogans.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. So the definition of the four pests gets changed sometimes with flies, and from what I can see, flies and mosquitoes are always on the list. And cockroaches apparently became a problem later on in China, and bed bugs were no longer a problem. So at one point in most campaigns, cockroaches had replaced bed bugs.
It became a phrase like keep calm and carry on. Like it's just something you insert into a campaign to kind of give it some patriotic feeling.
Patriotic meaning, right? So obviously there was, as far as I know, which I think is true, there's no more national killing frenzy of sparrows or any other sort of pests, because you see a fly, you kill it, right? If you could, right? So it's not, so no there are other campaigns that had happened. But no other campaigns were against birds or pests.
And none of them
at
were
that level
to that scale.
To this day, yeah, to that scale. In the Corona times, the special times that we live in today,
Yeah.
eliminate four pests is often part of the public health policy, and then as part of the effort to combat the coronavirus.
Okay.
So it has a legacy, right?
So for the coronavirus, some cities were essentially
they will come up with a list of policies
to prevent it,
to prevent or to still slow down the spread.
and they basically brought up essentially what was a man-made ecological disaster.
Well, they would bring up the eliminate four pests campaign. They wouldn't bring up the Great Leap Forward, obviously, but they would say Chu Sihai is part of the public policy.
Okay.
So the interesting thing about this is that you can obviously the sparrow campaign was really bad, right?
Yeah.
But you could argue, playing devil's advocate here, that the beginning of the campaign had a good intention.
Oh yeah, sure, right? I mean,
like,
public health. I mean,
not all parts of China had clean drinking water at
Yeah.
that time. People were poor, so
Yeah. I mean,
you wanted to eliminate superstition in many areas.
I mean, that's like saying like,
Yeah.
I get to a certain extent. I mean, obviously, the whole thing came from essentially what you're saying was the sketchiest of claims that the United States
I don't know if it's the sketchiest. There's a lot of claims about what
extremely
America had done.
yeah, I'm sure there's a lot of claims in Chinese on Chinese social media.
Oh, come on, we're not the only enemy of America.
Yeah, I'm sure there's lots of claims from the Russian Institute of Propaganda that this happened, but essentially it came from the sketchiest of claims that the United States was conducting
biological warfare
attacks
with superbugs
in the dead of winter into snowfields, and it kind of exploded. But it's like that's like saying sort of like the war on drugs had good intentions. Like, we don't want little kids to do drugs.
Well, they do say that.
And then 10 years later, half the country's in jail. Well,
half the country of.
Yeah, if you're
a
not
certain
white.
race.
Yeah,
not half the country.
Yes, that's true. Or certain races. So yeah, it does definitely. I mean, I do get that. Yeah, I mean, sure. Everybody wash your hands, kill bed bugs.
I will say I found English reports of like, oh, this was a good intention campaign that had gone sour. It's like sour.
What was that?
Sour. It was a genocide of birds.
What was that written by like the New York Institute of Maoist Studies?
How about like the Confucius Academy?
Yeah,
that's being established
Confucius
recently.
Academy for.
Yeah, what's the English name of it?
They're called Confucius Centers or something like that.
Confucius Center. Yeah. So
which is weird because the party hates Confucius. I think basically.
Not today.
They don't.
No.
They're pro Confucius. Oh, okay.
Well, they're not.
I guess Confucius says.
I mean, it's part of
I guess
we're bringing the culture back.
I guess Confucius says obey authority. So that's.
Yes. So, aside from the public health, aside from this word coming up,
yeah,
which I don't think it's going to continue to come up as part of a public health effort.
Yeah.
In China.
I'm sorry. It just is sort of like we were talking the other day about how the United States basically killed all the buffaloes except for like 300, and then we had to raise them from scratch.
Yeah.
And it'd be like if we were talking about a environmental campaign is the kill the buffaloes, eliminate the buffalo campaign, right? It's like, but
sparrows are not one of the 4 anymore.
I know. So, but do people
yes,
not?
I understand what you're saying.
I guess it's not in the history that sparrows ever were, right? You're saying people. If you asked somebody today in China, right? I mean, obviously people don't really think about it.
It's sort of like, yes, you can see sometimes, not the Americans are cagey about those campaigns or about those events.
When you say Americans, you mean Chinese?
No, American, like killing the buffaloes, for example, right? It's obviously known.
Yeah.
It's not promoted in any patriotic like museums or anything.
No.
But at least it has. You can't lie about it, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And it went down in history. It had a judgment.
Yeah.
And the judgment was like, yeah, that was very bad.
Yeah, we shouldn't have done that.
We shouldn't have done that. Also, was it was part of the effort to eliminate the Indians.
Yes.
As well. So, like, shouldn't have done that. At least that's the
Native Americans.
Native Americans, yeah.
Yeah.
So, is that the the correct term?
Well, do you know why they're called Indians?
No.
Because Christopher Columbus thought he was in India, and he thought that's what Indian people look like. So he went back.
Has he ever seen an Indian person?
No, how would you see an Indian person?
I don't know.
He was
But
a guy.
he heard of them.
He was a guy in 15th century Portugal.
I gotta freshen up on my Western history.
Yeah, you gotta
New World history.
You gotta freshen up on the rich history of how white people have been racist.
Colonialism,
yeah.
Yeah, but it had a judgment, right? Would you say?
Yeah.
So the Four Pests Campaign didn't really have an official judgment that's put down for it.
And there was never sort of like a healing and a kind of like a
healing for
all
who?
right.
We imported sparrows.
Yeah, but you know what I mean, like a healing,
I know
like
what you mean, yeah.
We screwed up. All right, let's not do that.
It's
and,
not reflection's
yeah.
not good. We don't want reflections.
Okay.
So we want to move on.
Yes.
And I will say, largely in the past 30 years, we've been focusing on moving on.
Okay.
So not to say that to move on is good or not. To move on only is good or not.
It's like you're bulldozing a house and just building on top of it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, no official judgment is given to the killing of the sparrows. And it's still a common phrase.
Okay.
And we're going to probably continue to use it. We hopefully will not have any more campaigns against birds. And I'm okay with, if it keeps coming up, to kill rats and flies. And
yes.
You can never kill all the flies anyways.
It's just sort of ironic that the history is kind of dark.
Yes. So let me say, when I researched this in Chinese, there's a lot of articles written about how it was bad.
Oh, okay.
But they're not part of the officially promoted, like I said, endorsed, promoted, sealed off official history.
Yes.
That goes down, right? So.
Well, it's interesting. I mean, again, this is going to be a really long episode, but I feel like we could do a whole episode on the fact that censorship in China, I don't think is necessarily what people think it is.
Yeah.
It's not that you can't say things. It's just that if you say things that are controversial, it's difficult to have them in any place where people can read them, right?
Yeah.
Like if you want to post an article about how something the party did was bad in an academic sense, like that's fine, right? I mean, those things get passed around. It's more just like if something is trending on Weibo and people are reading it, then they might get rid of it, right?
You don't want it to be trendy. You would,
yes.
Yeah. I mean, 1984 is available in China.
Yeah.
So in all digital, you know what I mean?
Yes.
Like big digital platforms, you can probably buy a book of it. And that's fine because it doesn't have the kind of level of influence that attention needs to be paid.
Yes.
So that was one legacy of the campaign. But to me, I sort of thought that another sort of more important legacy of the campaign was not really the sparrows, the four pests, or this idea of killing all the pests.
Okay.
I thought so this was sort of the first campaign really raised in the Great Leap Forward, which was also the biggest campaign that had raised in a very young PRC back then.
Yeah.
Right.
Because New China was founded
1949.
So,
and the Great Leap Forward started in 1958, right? So really 9 years after New China was born.
So if anybody's listening to this now, that's like, think about 2011, right? I mean, that's how new China was.
Yes. So obviously a lot had happened, and most of them political movements without a historical judgment. Some do. But so in a very young PRC at this point, we went through, in a very short amount of time, we went from the transformation from a conspiracy theory, really, in a way, to a national campaign with goals like promote public health and to promote, to protect the food source, which then transformed into a all-out political movement with a political purpose.
Okay.
That had rang the bell for the Great Leap Forward, right?
Yeah.
Look, open the curtain for it, really.
Yeah.
And the campaign itself is sort of a political training for both the party and its people, right?
Yeah.
And it had normalized how much a political movement can penetrate just every aspect of a society.
This is Americans. This is why we call everything the war on something, right? The war on poverty, the war on drugs, the war on terror.
You got to get used to the rhetoric.
Yes. And so this is like, they started off this is a war thing. And then they're basically training the populace to, as soon as the directive comes down as to what the enemy is, whether the enemy is sparrows or
people later
people or old Chinese pottery or temples, right?
Yeah.
Like you have to just
Chinese
move,
pottery.
right?
Yes.
You have to move and you have to do it.
Yes.
Or coronavirus, right? And if you don't do it, like
No, you have to do it.
yeah, I mean, there's no real option. If you don't do it, you're going to get very bad things are going to happen to you.
Yes. So this was a blueprint, right? Then really, they were learning how to do these things. And through this, there was, I mean, what better ways to learn than...
Do you want to get banned in China on the second episode, Cherry?
Well, we could always cut it. What do you want to say?
That's like Xinjiang is a blue
Let's get banned like right away.
Xinjiang province, and
Yes.
what's happening to Uyghurs is a blueprint for what's happening. What's
To all
gonna have
China.
all of China
And all of the world.
Sorry, we'll probably cut that part
Read New
out.
York Times.
Well, I mean,
The leak. Anyways, So the government from this point on, they formed these habits of the people, right? They formed these blueprints. They formed all these ways of thinking of the people, and they can easily interchange
sparrows for something
sparrows
else.
which at this point it was the birds. Bad for the birds, I know, but also when it's people,
It's worse.
If you have to put a hierarchy on, like, you know what I mean, how much suffering there is. So I'm sorry to say this to
Replace
to
sparrows
all the
with
animal
doctors,
rights people out there,
right?
but
Replace sparrows with doctors or
yeah.
college professors or whatever else, right?
Yeah, so obviously, once again, playing the devil's advocate here, don't really want to get banned by cut this part, obviously, but the national effort of China to stop the spread of coronavirus after we stopped denying it happened very, very quickly. And today, you know, like the fall, right, early fall of 2020, China is mostly back to normal, right? Not to say that, you know, because winter and springtime is, you know, probably going to be riskier. But, I mean, because we live in America, obviously. Yeah. And sort of...
If we were in China right now, there'd be people knocking on our door, taking us to
I don't think it's going to go that quickly. If no one listens to it, no one's going to come to your door.
Yeah.
So, you know what I mean?
So if we ever go back to China, nobody listen to our podcast, please, because we don't want to get arrested.
It's just for self-entertainment purposes only. So compared to a place where, like, we go out and then people might not wear masks, right? And they see it as sort of like it's a violation of their freedom. Yeah. Where versus in China. So that's the height of what individualism could be called, right? Yes. And versus to in China, Wuhan, the city, that's how many people? 11 million of people. Yeah. Could be locked down right away in overnight. And the Chinese idea of a lockdown, just like a Chinese idea of a political movement, is not what a Western country today would be used to, right? Yeah. Because like New York went into lockdown, right? And that's a different kind of lockdown than what Wuhan had.
That's a softball lockdown,
no, that's
right?
not even because in New York, you know, for example, if you lock down, it might mean most of the time just stay at home. Don't go to gyms, right? Yeah. Go buy some vegetables or food or whatever. Yeah. That's fine, right? And if you're a bar, maybe just don't operate, right? Yeah. Which is also bad. I understand. Yeah. However, in China, you will literally, your doors will be sealed by, they will put like 2x4s?
Yeah, like wooden planks.
Wooden planks would be nailed to your door. Yeah. And how do you get food? I don't know. If you live in a good community, maybe they will organize some sort of effort to deliver some, you know, some groceries to you. Mm-hmm. And if you have diabetes, I don't know. Do you get the medicine? Who knows? Yes. So
it's just sort of like the sparrows, right? It's like, well, what happens when we kill the sparrows? Yeah. It doesn't matter. We're just going to kill them. Like, what's the consequences of locking down the city?
What are the collaterals?
Yeah,
right?
what's the collateral
How do you
damage?
actually do this without killing people who didn't have coronavirus, but otherwise would suffer from the lockdown? That's not really considered in many aspects. Well, so
I think sort of like the sparrows, though. I mean, we'll probably never really know what the full consequences of what China did in places like Wuhan are, right? Yeah. I mean, who knows what the kind of collateral was there, right? Yes. I mean, CCP's not telling.
So obviously it's not uncommon in Western media today, in the past few months, that to promote China's methods and efforts on quarantining the whole population.
Yeah.
Right. And it's hard sometimes also to make an argument where we still live at a place where, we can't really, bars aren't open, right?
Yeah.
And obviously in China, everything's back to normal largely.
Yeah.
But it's not, I don't know, it's just not what it seems to be always. So there's more to...
It takes more than one incident to train a populace and a local government to react that way towards whatever the enemy is.
To mobilize the whole nation for whatever cause it may be.
And there's a lot of downsides to having
how you get there.
to how you get there.
Yes.
So so everybody wear a mask. Everybody use your individualism to do the right thing.
Yes.
But consider how China got the ability to be able to convince everybody to do that and think that there could be some downsides.
Yes, which could save some lives today. But it's not without any costs.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess that's the episode.
I guess that's the episode. Thank you to anybody for listening to the whole thing. I know this is a little bit long, and it's also kind of a it's sort of serious, right? We're doing our best to kind of fact check and research everything, but we're also kind of joking around. So, hopefully we didn't offend anyone. Hopefully we didn't offend anyone.
I'm self-censoring, obviously.
Are you self-censoring?
No, I'm not. I don't know if I am. That's the problem with it. It's in your blood, Cherry. Yeah. You were born in it. Yeah. You don't know. So this is Natalie. This is Cherry, and see you next time. Stay safe, and have a nice day.